So there needs to be this ability to close in and out as a lotus. This great discipline in a lotus. Completely opens and completely closes in. Not at the expense of shutting down. See? That's observe, did you observe lotus? How it, extraordinary, isn't it? Goes like this, and then with the rays of the sun, woof, opens up like that. Same as with the heart. See? Wherever we are, airports, large supermarkets, places where this, a lot of chaotic, perplexed energy, just close in, mind your business, be focused on what you need to do. Okay? So, as soon as you are in the environment which is conducive, you don't feel like, like in a company of people you have complete trust, in places of nature, openness, seaside, mountscape, landscapes, right, gardens, flowers, ponds, birds. You open up, and it has to become your second nature.
During meditations with you, I experience a lot of prana, and the flow of energy is very powerful, unstoppable sometimes. And I feel like development through this, that I can't name really what it brings about. But then sometimes after the process, I feel empty or I feel scared, because I also have injuries in my spine that would normally prohibit me from going into these processes. So the mind comes in and is questioning if this is a safe thing to be in this much energy. And I think the primary concern was with, I have a herniated disc in my neck and in my low back. And just a month ago, I was in a hospital. I actually came to the retreat in May, and I experienced a lot of healing in these places. Just to be put in a hospital suddenly because I started losing control over my legs. And I went through like a full paralysis in the spine, and lots of heat at the base of my neck. And also lots of like explosive, intense sounds on the inside. So that just happened a month ago, and I couldn't walk for a little bit. And then I come here, and then I'm in this incredible experience of the prana, not seeing any limitation in the body. So I would like to know a little bit about how to hold that correctly, this very, opposing two experiences in life right now.
Okay, so what I invite you to consider and reflect on is that, and you have related already before, right? That after that initial encounter where I was in Vienna, which prompted you to join us here, right, in your homeland, in this particular room, back in May, how you felt the healing and everything. And you were amazed and surprised, and we have exchanges, and I reassured you, and I told you that that's how it impacts, that's how the field impacts, like on all the areas. And people who come with traumas, physical, let's say injuries and everything, how it adjusts itself, right? And you were a living example of that, you have confirmed that. So any relapse we might experience, and we'll speak here to two aspects. Any relapses, you need to understand or consider at least that trauma that you undergone through, which was the result of that car crash, right? This was multiple even, right? Yeah. Still, that resonance of that in the body is there. But once you are in the field, you completely move by that, let's say, expansive movement of prana, which is incomparably, let's say, greater, available to you in a greater amount than, let's say, otherwise in your normal day-to-day life. So there is, everything is just have that flow, right, that ease. But the greater healing still continues. See? The greater healing is still continuous. So that what is experienced as relapse need to be attentively looked into. Because physical traumas are healed in a way, and the way they leave the body is how they are experienced. So sometimes this relapse, I'm only saying that without insisting, suggesting that this, what may seem as a relapse, in fact could be a greater healing in place. See? Greater healing, because that memory in the body resurfaces. And when it resurfaces, it resurfaces to heal. But it is accompanied by these unpleasant symptoms. Just like deep-seated illnesses are thrown out of the body when we go through this process of heightened pranic activity, let alone genuine kundalini process, are thrown out of the body. Thrown out, literally. So when we suddenly get sick, it's not the indication that something we're doing wrong or something in the process to be blamed, or we, regress. No, it's not. Not at all. I remember this almost cruel way how in the TM movement, right, like someone shares, right, or just, like, gosh, experiencing this now, this suddenly gone completely sick. Congratulations. It was like a staple, congratulations, with a smile. Hang on a second. What do you mean by that? Well, cruel. Where's the empathy? Because the take already, this work is steeped in understanding that this is something else. It pains itself out. So to be celebrated, to be understood for what it is. But it all boils down to that quicksilver-like, right? Placebo-like, how your attitude towards it. So this is the proverbial point here. Our attitude towards everything. See? It's like glass always half full or glass always half empty. This is the life's attitude. Someone constantly enjoys life half full, and someone is constantly, life is half empty all the time, bloody hell, living in this constant living hell, man. Delicious water. Oh, nasty water, Same water. Same water. Attitude is different, world of difference. I know it needs to be taken with disclaimer, right? Somebody breaks the leg, go to the hospital. Don't just, I'm going to be a samurai and go to the battle now without one leg. Maybe in a situation when that happens, right? There's so much adrenaline, they don't know. Shot through three times, still fighting, standing. I have Cossacks in my family. Some stories are frightening. I mean, they are frightening. And they're retold, My granddad was badass, was put in the zindan, which is an unescapable hole. Who knows what zindan is? It's a kind of, in Arab culture, in Islamic civilization, used as a prison. Instead of building a prison, a deep enough hole in the earth is dug, so, right? Hole. And you sit there. There's no way to climb out. It's called zindan, and he escaped from there. Yeah, completely escaped from there, So these stories there in the family were related to us men as a reminder. Whenever it feels tough, you don't know, you haven't seen nothing yet, as one of the presidents of the United States said. healthy attitude, you know. We all need a bit of that attitude, you know, of that Viking woman, of that gypsy woman, you know, of that nomad, of that Mongol who put a raw meat under his saddle, and by the time he arrives, he's got tartar, right? He's got this meat cooked and still raw, you know, by the heat of his body and the horse. Whew, imagine the amount of prana there. You can't beat Mongols, you know. So if you have a bit of Mongolian blood in you, use it, man, woman. Okay, so this is all to inspire you not to see this as a relapse. If you see it as a relapse, no doubt a relapse. See it as a recovery, no doubt, but recovery. That is when we move to the domain of higher Shakti, higher Upaya. We move to the domain. We apply consciously a different methodology, different Upaya. See? Whatever happens to us, attitude, bring it on. But of course, without doing stupid, silly, foolish things. That's where the disclaimer comes, right? Because some, very brave, very bright, start applying this totally in the wrong way, in the wrong department. I have reminded many times, I'm saying this not for you, Basha, but for the group mostly. I've seen one amazing awakenings in my life. Amazing awakenings that can be like, you write books about it, you compose songs about it, literally. I've seen it back in Uzbekistan, in Russia, you know, in England. Sometimes I was directly, let's say, involved in the sense of a catalyst, witnessed it all, and how all this spectacularly backfired in the most spectacular way, precisely because they were so spectacular, you know. I've seen young men who were declaring like nothing on a physical level can sway me. So I can smoke, drink, and fuck around to no end because I'm Shiva, you know, and I know it. Do you know how formidable that feeling is when you feel yourself as consciousness? And yet, there's a punchline and there is this, you know, heavy price comes. But in that, of course, also this as a disclaimer, I want you to simply notice this. When you are outside of these immersions now, as you're going to go back to your home environment and everything is here, and I see how your body bends and moves. Nobody will tell you, you look like a gymnast in the sittings. Completely boneless. Are you aware of the movements your body makes?
Yeah, I'm aware, yes. But
yeah.
First time kind of, you know, experience.
Yeah, I mean, the way your spine arches, this way, that way, you're like, you know, we should film you. This lady went through how many car crashes, spinal, this and that, you know. It's endorsement video, right? Right? So what you carry with you, it's all yours and can never be taken away from you. That's what it is. See? Resonance. All of us carry resonance. All of you carry resonance, this. Whatever is being touched. You want to stay in that resonance, you can stay in that resonance. I would say as long as that resonance lasts, which means as long as you can hold it. See? You remain in that resonance. And there, of course, skillful ways to plug in, replug, tap into this. See? So this is something else now in the domain of also, if you don't have immediate Sangha, you don't have immediate environment where you can replug to that, right? Into that field. This is where you plug into the field of elemental order. See? You can convert literally as sunlights, right? Are they called sunlights, the things that put on the roofs? What are they? Solar panels. You can convert solar energy, the energy of the wind, energy of the weather, elements. See? When you're filled, it takes a little bit of practice. A little bit of practice. See? You have to obviously understand that it needs to be in places of where there is openness in nature like that. It has to be at least a large park, not just a little square. See? Where there's presence of large trees, where there is a prana, where inclination of land, right? Whenever the land is different, right? Whenever water runs, there's always excess of prana. At the shore, there's more prana, where these breaks are, right? Waves break and go down. At the point of where that big water breaks and goes down, there's greater prana. Right there is a greater prana. You go more inland, right? Already, let's say, 500 meters, there's still prana of the ocean, if it's an ocean. If it's just a water reservoir, less. You drive in a few kilometers, already less. See? Yogis always understood that places where greater prana is, you need to look for them, smell them, sense into them. And this is the place where you can plug in. It's for all of you. See? I remember just from my own practice, lived next to the park in the leafy area of London, right? And that aforementioned Primrose Hill, Elizabeth Terrace. There's no way I could go somewhere. I didn't drive at the time. I didn't own a vehicle. I could not go anywhere. Like, where can I check myself? Which ashram? No, I'm in a sadhana. So I would go, I find places in the park. You know, Hampstead Heath, Highgate, Primrose Hill when it's not populated. The wind comes, but it's not cold. I immediately take off all my top. And I feel that, you know, infusion of that prana. Feel it. It really, really goes as if through the cellular structure, you know? Dipping into the wild waters, ponds, rivers, lakes. Constitutional, of course, setup is important, right? There's vata in excess, and you know, temperature takes more to warm up. One needs to be careful, you know, so not to do it outside of the warm climate. But if there is enough of in the constitutional setup of pitta and kapha, you know, plunging into that cold water, plunging into that stream, and consciously absorb all that prana. You know, you can just sit on a bench in the park and face the sun just like, okay, me sitting here and there is a sun. Nothing happens. Something happens, of course, always. Always. There's always this magnanimity of the sun. It's good. Vitamin D, if nothing else. But completely relaxing in that very moment. And you can feel, you will actually feel through the cellular structure how this exchange of great prana taking place. I'm speaking this now unplugged in a group like this because many of you in that complete open state where there is this interchange of pranic currents. So this is, you know, to be shared. So that this intensity is, as it were, re-experienced. See, you plug in now through Prakriti, through nature, through elements. See? Of course, there are even subtler ways to plug in. Subtler, beyond this, beyond the sunlight, beyond the wind, breeze, see, water. But I think it will suffice at this level to, you know, to be open to that. And of course, the group where you feel, yes, that's my energy. See? Otherwise, you need to be a little bit more closed, a little bit more converted. So you don't leak that energy, you don't dissipate that. This is where we consciously know where to unravel, where to open. We have exercises done before for people who have excess of that, and they go and they become like hoovering all that muck from the environment because the heart is open. Because wherever you go, if your heart is open, you become that, you just pick it all up. So there needs to be this ability to close in and out as a lotus. This great discipline in a lotus. Completely opens and completely closes in. Not at the expense of shutting down. See? That's did you observe lotus? How it, extraordinary, isn't it? Goes like this, and then with the rays of the sun, woof, opens up like that. Same as with the heart. See? Wherever we are, airports, large supermarkets, places where this, a lot of chaotic, perplexed energy, just close in, mind your business, be focused on what you need to do. Okay? So, as soon as you are in the environment which is conducive, you don't feel like, like in a company of people you have complete trust, in places of nature, openness, seaside, mountscape, landscapes, right, gardens, flowers, ponds, birds. You open up, and it has to become your second nature.
I just wanted to say that this was really incredible that you started talking about the elements, the nature, and the expansion of prana, the natural prana occurrence in these very expansive fields. For me, the beginning of the process was facilitated in nature. When this process started, truly, I was already in my 30s, and I felt as if the energy was coming from the feet into the body and then entering the spine, and then also it was coming from above. And I always thought it was natural for all human beings to be able to receive the elements like that we are in that axis of exchange with the natural forces. Currently, this is the sad or difficult part of my process where I grieve or I long for that constant experience of union in nature, where in the past I would enter the forest or enter a natural place and could feel then the unique quality of a tree, energy, or the kind of a land I was standing on, and I was constantly resupplied from that energy. Now I feel more like an individual person, just walk around like everybody else, and I miss it a lot. And I guess maybe my question is it because I'm just, the prana that is available at this time is just less. I can't feel the subtle energy. I can't feel it building and constructing the whole body, the energy body inside. In the past, it was so literal. It was like I was feeling like there was an architecture of the light that was being constructed from. It was available. It was happening, and it was effortless. And right now, I feel like I'm laboring this. Even in meditation, when there is so much energy available, I feel like I can't feel it as directly in my cells. And also, the mental piece doesn't get incorporated into the practice.
Well, as we have spoken before, these are the environmental influences. This is the influences of the collective consciousness. So, this is the downside of, living in direct proximity to all these vibrations, right? And these vibrations are thick in the valley. right? You are not living above these vibrations. You're living submerged in these collective vibrations. So it takes a lot to alleviate yourself. So you elevate and alleviate. So elevating yourself alleviates you from being subjected to these prevalent thoughts. See? So this is so that you don't blame extensively lack of, let's say, abilities, but you acknowledge that. It's a simple, healthy acknowledgement. This is why state of collective affairs is not a trivial thing. We all are subjected to that. And then everything increases that in proportion, decreases or increases to how much more we are willing to get exposed to that. And of course, with this continued, let's say, agitation in the mental field, when there is a cultural civilizational breakdown, where, effectively speaking, something tries to ascertain itself by virtue of continued propaganda, by virtue of continued indoctrination. Right? And yet the process of all this coming to the light is unstoppable at the same time. So the means and the tools and the methodologies become more and more invasive from behind the scenes. See? Just before the age of the internet, let's say, just unwinding, for those you old enough, in the 90s, everything was in the domain of newspapers and radio, whatever was spoken on TV, radio, or read in the newspapers. There was no other alternative. So it's enough to own that by corporations, and corporations began to own that. In England, I remember how each newspaper fell, one after the other. National newspapers, traditionally meant to be a plot of so-called independent journalism, became propaganda windows. Each and every one of them. And I used to buy Sunday periodics, weekends. It's like you go back home, like several kilos of press. You know, The Guardian, which comes as the Observer in the weekend. We used to, you know, Sunday Times was already in the hands of Murdoch early on, so just like felt through and through indoctrination. No. But still there is a control over the news information. Right now this control has to be exerted differently. See? Differently. You cannot just control newspapers. Nobody reads newspapers. Nobody cares for newspapers. Majority of people are gaining their information from other sources, right? And these sources are internet. These sources are mostly these days quickly, easy on the go, in the format of blogs, interviews, right? YouTube mostly. Why am I saying this? Is simply for you to understand that it's not easy. If you were to move right now, pack and move somewhere, couple of thousand at altitude, you will feel already much less, I would say 50% at least, maybe more, of that mental field. So, do you hear what I'm saying? That's why we consciously disidentify with disinformation, because it is disinformation. We live at the end of certain, like, for example, people who are not speaking, not giving spiritual discourses, these are analysts. These are people who simply give these predictions in which way civilization, culture, economics, and so forth goes. And there are open voices, and all of you must have come across, that we are at the precipice where some say we already live in a complete and utter totalitarian system, which basically doesn't display the obvious signs of totalitarianism that we're familiar with, let's say Stalin, Hitler, Mao, what have you, right? But it's much more subtle totalitarian system. It's the totalitarian system that got formed by the merging of all corporate interests. So we live in a totalitarian system of the corporate economy, which is dominated by this, what is referred to as shadow government, or shadow, right, whatever they called. What's that term? Shadow government, right? So in other words, it doesn't even matter who is the president, who is the prime minister. These are people simply pushed onto the arena to represent something, to balance the state of affairs. But the real decisions, real policies, everything happens at a much subtle level. And there is another voices saying that we are on the brink of where we will enter the phase when we literally will have one day, one morning announcement that right now we live in conditions and where everyone would be, let's say, obliged to go and register, without which one cannot function in that matrix. That registration would amount for complete and utter system seal into itself, because it can no longer contain these principles of democracy. The very principle of democracy was like, when I grew up, I'll tell you is it time for jokes or not? Oh, it's not good. There's an old joke, very old Soviet Union time joke, like. So the American confronts citizen of the Soviet Union, says like, you guys have no democracy whatsoever. I can go into the, Capitolium, and I can go to the next to the White House and start shouting, like whatever, like Reagan is a criminal. Reagan is a like corrupted president. And the Soviet Union citizen listened to that and said, absolutely, we have exactly the same situation. I can go into the Red Square and start shouting, Reagan is a criminal, Reagan is a corrupted president. So please don't tell me we don't have, it's like that. So, and now people get arrested with home arrests for posts, for taking stand. Literally arrested, not metaphorically arrested, not given warning. No, come, raiding the house and arresting them. These cases are documented and being spoken of right now. So therefore the new legislation is now in place to clamp down completely on any possibility of speaking other than in line with the official consensus. See? And what helps to support official consensus is a support from behind the scenes, yappy guys like Jordan Peterson. See? Like Ben Shapiro. All these people have signed lucrative contracts very long time ago. You see, the creation of the platform that they belong to has been masterminded already at the beginning, at the break of the 20th century to the 21st. I'm in the possession of the information of the formation of a new intellectual society, which stands supposedly for preservation of Western European values. So that some of these people are championed to represent that, so that you and I don't just think that we are indoctrinated by political commentators. No, we will be indoctrinated by these psychologists, historians, right? People with PhDs, MDs, and who are eloquent, who seems to be on the ball, right? Because that's much more believable. See? When I remember a few years ago, some of my students tell me, from behind the scenes, like some of us feel that you are like Jordan Peterson in spirituality. And I'm like, seriously? I go and listen to some of the stuff and think, oh my God, if this is how you perceive me, folks, this guy is a complete and utter liar, pathological liar. There's not a shred of truth in him, And this is many years ago. This is before he showed his true colors. All right, this is a detour. This is a concession in what we spoke. Concession in the sense mental field. You can't blame your mind for being impure if you are submerged in the dirty waters. Right? You want to go and take a dip somewhere, and you're going to dip and you come out, and it's like, oh my God, what all this slime, what all this stuff? That your mind is submerged in that. See? So it takes much more in our day and age if you live, you have a job, interact somewhere, life as usual. Of course, sun is shining, fantastic. You go to California, you think paradise is always there, because the weather wins it, right? You forget that if you are in Southern California, you are in a desert. Nothing's supposed to bloom here, right? It's a bizarre, it's a freak of human imagination to turn Los Angeles into oasis. You know that?
I do. Can I just say something?
It's true.
So, something about your lectures, the crispiness, how the information comes in, it seems like you just go below all the complete chaos of information, disinformation, we're just constantly producing information. It's impossible to sort it out with the mind. And I think you mentioned the concept of Satyam. There's a certain connection to the truth. And I know in your case, it's just like somehow you just know. And I'm sure, and maybe you could speak to, how do you reach for information, decide what is the correct information? How do you organize the pool of, even for the cognition to work with the actual sources that we have access to, and then extrapolate out of that and recognize the truth, and then synthesize it into something that also applies to people that you speak to, and something that can come out on the channel and finally break the silence about stuff that we sometimes hold our voices back because we can't even know the truth, because we're still trying to use our mind, for knowing the truth. And I just love that fact that you're not confused and you're not sitting on the fence about stuff. You seem to just speak about, this is what's real, this is what's important, and that clarity, it's just it's striking. It's a striking quality.
Yeah, of course, it's trained. Us secret agents are going through very extensive training. So. But truth be told, I don't have access to reliable information. I have access to the same information everyone else is exposed or bombarded by. But what he is at work, since you spoke about it, I for a moment just reflected on this, is the state of receptivity in the heart. So this is something I cannot help, nor is it something that can easily be explained rationally, but I have a high sensitivity to any forms of BS instantly. See? It's a both gift and a curse. See? Because also when you're surrounded by your own children, people you love and know, when you sense that, it's not helpful. Sometimes you wish you don't sense that. So this is why I try to teach my children, at least from the positive point of view. I tell them, do you want things happen in life that in accord with your wishes and desires? Then you have to be anchored in truth. At least never lie for trivial reasons. Why? Because the only reason why our world does not transform into manifestation is because our world is not pure, because it's polluted by our own lies. So this is the connection, this is the meaning of Satyam. So lying is permitted. Now I'm sharing how I speak to my own children. This is not to be taken as a, it's just simply sharing. When I speak to my children, I tell them, lying is permissible only when you prevent someone from being hurt. So if you know saying truth will hurt someone unnecessarily, that's the only excuse when you don't do that. But there are situations when you can't do that, even that, because in doing so, you cause suffering in the longer term, for example. But other than that, quit lying, full stop. There's no need to say things which are somehow gone in conflict with values that one way or another all of us share. So maybe there is something that to the degree where every information I receive immediately get checked at the heart level. It's not rationalized. It has first heart response, how I feel. See? And then it can get, let's say, more that synthesized perspective into what and how. And of course, there's ways of how to tap into something to see it for what it is. It can be fostered. It can be fostered, literally. And of course, it can only be fostered if one is an experienced meditator. If one sees how thought subsides, mental activity, and how it resurfaces. Right? We spoke about in the flow program, those of you who remember, right, that very important, the formation of the thought, and this is why sutras were brought in there, so that we are at the precipice of this, right, process of formation. So, that's the only, let's say, way how I can navigate in the pool of all, in whirlpool of all the information out there. Understanding that even what is spoken very often, let's say from what seemingly would be considered to be, oh, that's the perspective I agree with. But I can see that's also propaganda. Right? There can be negative and a positive propaganda. Right? Indoctrination can be of various kinds. But at the very same time, also there is something else. There is this larger movements of energy. Larger movements of energy in terms of propelling forces that put people in opposing camps, force them. And this is where many of us would be in for a surprise, even in this lifetime, because certain forces will play themselves out utilizing the players that are out there. There are no other players. So therefore some characters that we consider to be highly controversial, problematic, right? What have you not? Because we've been told so, will begin to play very, very important positive changes. So it is through them that these positive changes would be brought. We can't expect suddenly a righteous leader rising. The field is polluted. How can the righteous leader rise? There was a progressive suffocation of the possibility for the righteous leaders a long time ago. Long time ago. Again, if we are to give this more of a concession from spiritual discourse and speak about it in terms of, let's say, speaking about it from and equipped with political awareness. The last statesman, pardon me. The last statesman in the United States was J.F. Kennedy. Truly. He was the last true statesman. What characterizes statesman? What characterizes great politician, great head of state? That's what statesman. One who combines simultaneously the need for the welfare of one's nation, whilst that is simultaneously in alignment with deeply held personal values. See? Whom among the ensuing presidents carried this quality? Maybe Jimmy Carter, in my assessment, in my humble opinion. Maybe Jimmy Carter. Maybe. And we know what happened to J.F. Kennedy. He did not comply. See? But the way he acted in the time when the world could have been thrusted there and then into nuclear disaster, he single-handedly exercised the right of the American president to overrun the military responses, the military machinery. Literally, he exercised that right. The Cuban Missile Crisis was not a trivial affair. Not a trivial affair. You all know the history of the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? You all know how close it was. Because in the military language, there is a law of engagement. If engagement started, only engagement is response. And then it only minutes separate victorious one from being defeated completely to the ground. And he stepped in and personally, without any knowledge of military, let's say, way of how it unfolds, held the entire military command of the United States at his fingertips, that nobody dares without my saying so. And we could say he single-handedly took upon himself that insurmountable amount of karma. This is a great statement. This is a great, great leader. He wasn't a saint. No, we know that. He was representing people of his party and everything. But the history of United States was decided there and then when he was assassinated. You see? The declassified information that Oliver Stone was after so much when he made his famous JFK back in the 90s, right? With Kevin Costner. I don't know how many of you have watched it. He wasn't even in a possession of all the information which was only declassified this year. How many of you are aware of that? You're aware of that, right? The stuff that came out that was, So, and of course, this example is given to the naivety of hoping that there will be a good leadership in our day and age right now when the field is so violated, the collective field. And yet, dare I say, that leader is already there, or he will come. Something will change in his field of awareness, in his field of consciousness, and they will act in alignment with what was defined just now, in the interest of the nation, whilst at the very same time in alignment with highest values, what is required. And that is not an easy act to follow. Not an easy act to follow. Everything else is a deeply wretched personal affair. You see? Like representing military complex, representing, effectively speaking, the industry that lives of war, full stop. So in other words, nobody is interested in peace to begin with. Nobody needs peace, because peace will bring it will stop bringing enormous profit. See? It will stop bringing enormous profit. Billions and billions, hundreds of billions in profit would be not possible. Can you imagine now for a moment how can and should economy of this or that country be rewired, reorganized, so that it becomes profitable to live in peace. Literally, so it becomes profitable to live in peace. At the moment, it's profitable to have wars, at least as far as the experience of the 20th century. United States as a superpower rose, we could say, in the ashes of where Europe was and Eurasia in large degree, in terms of its, let's say, even impact, not just on the economy, because paradoxically, the economy of Soviet Union rose into extraordinary strength in just 5 years. This is something many economists don't understand. How is that even possible? So this alignment towards making highest profit from war was put into action deliberately. So there had to be constant wounds in the world somewhere, open wounds. See? We've had these conversations, Saddam became an enemy and invaded because the price on oil had to be fixed and all the rest of it. But the picture is much bigger, much more intricate there. Or how, in terms of the economy, banking system of Switzerland was financing the Allies and Hitler's military machine simultaneously. They would all meet together. One have a meeting, the Allies, UK, US, they go into the meetings, having their private conversation, okay? And in the waiting room, they come across the, Nazi leaders, and they all shake hands, like, how you doing? Human beings, you cannot just be at that time in the same room with someone in a waiting room and not say hello. It's just like, hello, how are you doing? Okay, good, yeah, all right. So, how is it? No, let's not talk about it. Okay, agreed. I'm next. Banking system, never loses. It always wins. So there is another perspective. So all this is, field is polluted. That's it. So you can't, bottom line, blaming yourself for mentally feeling drained. I say that all the time as a reminder. Whilst we don't extricate ourselves from the reality of the world we live in, whilst we apply this highest, let's say, highest pointers that a particular philosophy brings, we need to also understand that at the level of this plane of reality, at the level of manifestation, where all these conflicting tendencies are constantly colliding, we need to also have clarity and understanding that we are subjected to these very fields of energy, which often negatively influence our own field all the time. So it takes tremendous amount of personal effort to extricate oneself and live in one's own world whilst not bypassing it. This is, see, the task. But as I said, as an experiment, you go up the mountains, suddenly all that burden is off your shoulders and off your mind. You just forget it all. It's no longer that pressing. But down in the valley, everything is pressing. Every damn thing is so acutely, has that, So you can't blame yourself or blaming your inability to remain in peace, right? Remain in peace. There are wars out there. Unsurmountable amount of suffering. So this is why there are no kind of This is what it means, taking off rosy glasses, the rosy tinted perspective over how we can just, no, this, we're born in this day and age. In us, the fate of this world is made and decided all the time. We are constantly being put into test. And this test is simultaneously, we're fighting our own existential battle, where within that existential battle, the forces of light and darkness settle their affairs. Give me a break, man. Like, if only it was just like dealing with my own stuff, and all these creatures from all these different realms also settling affairs here. Hey, seriously? And yet all this is intricately interconnected. Our own existential affair and the forces settling the affairs straight. See? So of course that's what it means. That's what Somerset Maugham poem, Razor's Edge. The razor's edge. That's what the whole, not poem, novel. The novel, pardon me. So, that's why we bring this in a spiritual discourse, because it's otherwise also prone to this one-sided perspective, which we have to hold it all together. Hold it all together, having that all-encompassing view. See? We have to also understand the ingredients that went into that. Right? Like, what constitutes this, and this part. And we have to be able simultaneously to enjoy the giving moment in time for what it is, because this is our primary responsibility and job. We have to live that bliss consciousness, because that is the only thing, that's the only truly saving grace. This is the true healing power of all and everything. And then, of course, at the descending scale, at the descending level, we have to act in accord with our values, so as not to create split, so as not to create inner conflict. That's Satyam. That's aligning constantly. So there seems to be no way out of that. Right? We can pretend. No, Ramana Maharshi demanded fresh newspapers every day. He read newspapers. He didn't sit there like in Brahman or all Brahman. No, he wanted to know what's going on. How many knows of Ramana Maharshi's life? You didn't know he was slapped in the ashram when ashram was raided. Do you know that he was an avid reader of newspapers? All right, that's another one for you. There is even a picture, the famous picture of Ramana Maharshi. Right on the side, there's a whole bundle, like a whole pile of newspapers. They're not there to wrap some gifts or something. They're to read. Interfering in the war between different tribes of monkeys locally. That's also a lesser known fact about Ramana Maharshi. Yeah. There were tribes of monkeys who were fighting for the domain too, and he interfered personally. Yeah. He would not have it like, monkeys fighting here. Why not just its nature? Not only its nature, nature is illusion. It's Maya. I'm Brahman, I'm in Brahman, I rest in Brahman. What do I care, monkeys fighting? How do I even know they're fighting or playing? No, he was very adamant. very adamant. So, going back to where you have, let's say, about the mind and craving for peace, right? Just know, be aware of that, okay? And just know what brings you peace, what gives you peaceful vibrations, what anchors you in peace. That's all. Practical, down to earth. But the mind will be affected, the mental field. Learn to discriminate. Learn to literally drive away the thoughts that are destructive, negative, that inevitably come to everyone, irrespectively. Because that's like the weather moves, shifts. See, you catch yourself something, you're thinking that is counterproductive to your life, counterproductive. You just nip it in the bud. See? You disidentify with that. Recognize for what it is. See? And either go into the recess, the state where this is, let's say, more of that contemplative state. Or counter that thought, I will think about something else consciously now. Totally consciously. I will change the energy. I will shift the energy. So none of us are exempt from that. None of us are exempt from being able to truly tune our own radio to the waves we want to hear. We cannot like once tuned in and hearing that and no, don't like it, change it. Nobody does that now. Okay, what example? Modern example. Give me modern AI example, like something. Swipe, yeah. Don't like the swipe? Don't swipe. I go through this so repeatedly. Do not recommend this channel, do not recommend this channel, do not. Like I sit down, oh my God, my fingers already painful from do not recommend this channel because I want something else. Yeah, of course, the next day is just recommending the same stuff. So, don't be hard on yourself. You're doing fine, Basha. Don't just grow in your own strength. Okay? Trust. And if that, what you've spoken of, if that is with resonance, why is it in resonance? You see? You could have also reflected, maybe without saying like, yeah, I like his spiritual teaching, like there's a lot of people out there who, I like when he talks about Kundalini and Kashmir Shaivism, but as soon as he opened his mouth about politics, you better shut it, I don't like his political views at all. Keep going, man, about, stay on track. Don't get distracted. There's healthy, friendly comments in the commenting section, Man, you totally lost me here. You're totally wrong, or unsubscribe and then keep commenting, So it could be that, right? Resonate with the spiritual stuff, but as soon as he talks about life, gosh, can't stomach it. So instead you have resonance. So dare I say something which may sound as self-complimentary. How can it be recognized? It can only be recognized as the quality of your own Satyam. No, there's no other way of how it can recognize. See? In this is how it goes. We recognize truth only by virtue of that truth reflecting our own truth back to us. The same with knowledge, the same with everything, the same with beauty. So that we've got that classical, right? Shivam Satyam Sundaram, right? That Trinity, that, right? Being consciousness bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, but spoken in different way. Shivam, Satyam, Sundaram, right? This auspiciousness of the one and only, one without a second. The truth and the beauty. All together. And it is recognized only by virtue of reflecting our own quality.